Hi, I'm Gary with VTech Corvette. What we're doing here today is going through and showing you how to remove and reinstall a differential on the C2 and C3 cars, 63 through 79 cars. This here is a 308 differential. It's probably typical of a lot of the differentials that we do here in the shop. We've gone through an old core, rebuilt it. It's got a different gear in it. It's got a 308 in it, ready to be installed. This 308 is going to go in this red 63 Corvette. The 63 Corvette has a 411 in it right now. The customer's not happy with the RPM he has to drive the car at, so that's what we're going to end up doing for him. Okay, here we are underneath the rear end of the car. Of course, this is the differential we're aiming to get out. Generally, these cars in, we're not sure what the shape they are when they come in. We deal with what we have. The spare tire carrier has already been taken out of this car. There's two bolts that you have to remove up in the rear end here, and two bolts on the cross brace that have to come down. Then you remove that whole spare tire carrier out of the way, set it on the ground, it's out of the way. On this car, it depends on removing the exhaust system or leaving it in. If you take it out, it's a little bit easy to work under here. In this car, we're going to attempt to leave it in only because some parts of the exhaust system have been welded in place and we don't want to disturb that right now. The first thing we're going to do after the spare tire has been removed, we've talked about the exhaust system, we're going to go ahead and take the spring out. What we've done here, we got a jack and a C-clamp and a block of wood to keep that jack from splitting. We've jacked it up. We're ready to take this bolt out. About the spare tire carrier, the exhaust system, the first thing we're going to do is take out the spring. Just remember, you may have to spray down some of these items with liquid wrench or something. Also, you'll be probably working on the floor with four jack stands on the car. Just remember to support the front of the car in front like we have, primarily because lifting up in the spring may tip the car forward, and you don't want to tip it off the jack stands. We're going to take out this screw here and take this nut off. Come off. This grommet's pretty well shot. We'll replace that. Go ahead and lift this down. And then we'll go do the other side. Okay, on this one, we got the same setup here. This nut is frozen. We can't get it out. We use penetrating spray or something. Can't knock them out. So we're just going to go ahead and cut it out. As we showed you using the cutting torch to get this bolt loose, we've cut it in half. It's gone. You don't need a torch. You use a hacksaw if you want to, or a sawzall. We'll cut right through that bolt. The next thing we're going to do is take out these four bolts here. These two L-shaped brackets here you won't see on hardly any cars anymore, but they were part of a bumper hitch system for these mid-years. We're just going to take those out with the four bolts. When we take the four bolts out, we're going to just drop this spring right onto the pipes here, then slide the spring out to the side. And we're going to work it out to the side here. We've gotten our spring out. We had to actually loosen up part of the exhaust system to get some more leverage on it to get it out. Took some tugging and pulling, but we did get it out, pull it off here to the side. The next thing we did was we took the shock mount out. That's this piece here. It's got goes in here on the lower flange for the strut rod. Also took off the bottom end of the shock off. There's a 3/4 inch nut here that has to come off. Then you can push the shock out of the way. Sometimes these shock mounts get frozen in here and you have to use a little persuasion. this nut would be removed. There's a little tool you call a shock knocker. You screw this on to the end of it here and use a hammer and knock the shock mount out. Sometimes it does get frozen in there. You have to use some heat on either end of it to help persuade it to get it to come out. The next thing we're going to do is take out our camber adjusting bracket here. Before we do that though, we got these camber adjusters for the strut rods. We're going to take and mark these just in case we want to reuse these strut rods and put them back in the same place without having to go through an alignment issue. I got a marker here. You can use a metal die grinder and just scribe a mark across there or whatever you have. Just for reference, so you can put these bolts back in the same place. We probably won't be doing that, but some guys do take out their strut rods. So we've taken out, there's 4 bolts here. Do not use an impact on these 4 bolts. There's 3/8 inch bolts up in here. If you use impact, you have a chance of shearing them off in the housing. And we have gotten differentials in here where that has happened, and you end up throwing the housing away because you cannot get the bolt back out. It's been sheared off flush. Anyway, I've got 3 bolts out. We're going to take this last one out and take the strut rod out, or this camber adjusting bracket out. Just a note, we got our camber marked here and here. We know which way this goes back up in, but there is only one way. There is one hole here that is offset, so it can only go back into the car one way. Next thing we're going to do is take out the drive shaft. Before we do that, we're going to take and mark the drive shaft with a piece of some paint. Put a spot there. We're going to put a spot right there. Okay, the drive shaft is balanced, so when we take apart from the yoke, we know which way it goes back together. Anyway, we'll disconnect these U-joint here. We'll slide the transmission yoke forward, drop this shaft down, then we can disconnect the rear and take it out of the car. We've disconnected the half shaft from the transmission. Always taking before you even take the drive shaft out, you can do this with the U-joints too on the half shafts, but take and tape up these bearing caps while they're still in the car. We still have to disconnect it from the rear end, but I'll keep these bearing caps from coming off and dropping on the ground, losing the needle bearings, and then you end up having to replace the U-joint also. Taking the drive shaft out, it's over in the box. The next thing we've taken out is the rear cushion mount for the rear end. There's a bolt on top, and here this is sandwiched in between there. We've taken that out in this step. This is the cross member that's up in the car. The rear cover for the differential hangs from it. There's 4 bolts here that come in from the top that hold the differential up there. On either side there's 2 big rubber sockets that go up onto the socket up there. They're held in with a 7/16 bolt that's screwed into the frame. What we're going to do is back that bolt out about 3/8 of an inch up in the car, okay, on both sides. Back it off about 3/8 of an inch, don't take it all the way out. Okay, we got it backed off 3/8 of an inch. Then we're going to get a crowbar or a big pry bar and pry this socket away from the frame on both sides, okay, and let it fall on the bolt so it doesn't fall, the support doesn't fall on the ground. Okay, we've pried the other side apart, dropped it down on the bolt. We're going to try this side, see how difficult it is.